Hey guys, I realized right after my last video that I had one more point that I had to show you in order to talk about the obstacles to voting and whatnot. So we're going to do one more quick video on that, and then I'll have one last video, fingers crossed, video number 18 we'll say, on polling. And then that'll be it for the videos for this chapter 6. Okay. So here we go. Let's take a look at some of the obstacles to voting. We obviously see voter ID laws can be a pretty big obstacle, especially if you don't have a driver's license. And usually people that are unable to get driver's license or those that are also kind of hurting financially. And so this is mainly it's not a big deal having a driver's license and getting a voter ID, but if you don't have that, then what does it cost to go to the DMV to have them take a picture of you, to say who you are? And the cost on that can sometimes deter people to be like, I'm just not going to do it. It's just one more obstacle. So here we go. Not that obstacles should be incredibly insurmountable and that we can overcome these. But again, sometimes it's difficult to get people to turn out and vote. So here we go. Let's talk about it. Voter registration is the number one obstacle. So as we look at like institutional obstacles and like within the actual system, having to register to vote. And as you guys know, I posted this on October 13th as the deadline to register to vote. If you're 18 by November 3rd, but that's one big obstacle. Okay. Winner take all elections. We talked about this quite a bit, even going back to like assignment number 2 and how, especially when you're in a state that is heavily red team or blue team, that may be a deterrent from you to want to vote because you're like, listen, the state's going to go blue, the state's going to go red. What's the point? My vote really doesn't matter. Kind of like this cartoon down here. Again, that's kind of a pessimistic outlook, but it's also a realistic outlook to say that if you are in a state that's very one-sided, you would have a low turnout because it wouldn't affect you don't have as much impact on the election based on it's always going to go red team or blue team. Okay. Absentee ballots, this can actually be a problem. You have to fill these things out correctly. Otherwise your vote doesn't count. Mr. Matthews has a personal experience with that. My wife, who at the time was my girlfriend back in 2004, we were voting, and we were voting for different people, different parties. And so we had to do it through absentee ballot. So we're both in college. So I send in my absentee ballot in. She sends hers in. And then I get a notification like weeks later saying, dear Mr. Matthews, thank you for attempting to vote, but you filled it in incorrectly. Your vote was not counted. And my wife did not get a notice like that. And her vote was counted. So she definitely held that over me for many years to come. But absentee ballots can be somewhat of a tricky thing. They're kind of cool in that you can vote for them. Like the president does absentee ballots in Florida if you're not going to live there. But again, you got to make sure you request them in time and that you fill them out completely and accurately. Okay. Single day Tuesday voting is another big obstacle. I'll show you this video. This is a video of an election in Northern Virginia and just let you see what it's like to vote in a state, if you will, where I'm going to get off all that. Maybe I can show you. Oh, I'll tell you, I will have to link this video on Classroom for you to see like what it's like to vote in like an 8-hour line it was in Northern Virginia back in 2012. Just so how can you do that if you are a worker? How are you able to make time? Now, many states have changed that, even Virginia, right? We have early voting now. But before that could have been a big obstacle because number one, who has time to vote in the line that long? And then number two, why would you want to? Like even me as an AP government teacher, would I stand in a 5-hour line to vote? Right? What's my time limit? And so this is where some people would say that's a deterrent. Okay. Voter ID cards, there's two sides to that, right? One side is say you need to have voter security, but the other side is like this is another obstacle that could hurt those people that are going to be already hurting financially, usually, and especially minority groups that could suffer from this because they don't have license or they don't have the documents needed. Then maybe that's just another deterrent we can look at. Demographic groups, again, we said usually young people don't vote, low income doesn't vote. And then one big thing is for voter turnout is just apathy, right? The fact that people who just don't care, they're tired of the system, and it's just not that interesting. What is the impact of low voter turnout? Well, obviously that can have a big impact on elections. Here's a couple of maps showing you. if did not vote had been a candidate in 2016 presidential election, meaning more people did not vote in these states than actually voted in these states, right? So Clinton would have won 51 votes. Trump would have won 16, but a majority of people in Virginia did not vote. And again, this is what kind of leads to that voter apathy. When we say we still have pretty low voter turnout, this can be the effect of it. And it can also make it obviously, competitive in some ways, and that you don't know who's going to turn out, but then it's very difficult to make those predictions. Let me give a quick example. Here's the election predictions going into 2016, right? So we know Trump wins 2016. Now remember, in order to become president, all you have to do is get 270 electoral votes. All you have to do. It's a whole lot. But Clinton going into this election, according to a number of polling organizations and whatnot, had Clinton at 239, Trump at 153. So the betting odds were on Clinton. In fact, almost every newspaper outside of like the LA Times were doing polls showing that Clinton's going to win this thing. LA Times was one of the few ones that actually said Trump's going to win. And they actually came across as saying that there's this large movement of people who don't normally vote are energized. And they looked at a lot of the rural communities and say, I think that's going to be a turning point. And the LA Times was right on that one. But we have a lot of states that were up for grabs, obviously. But what ultimately happens is Trump wins Michigan, right? Trump's going to win Pennsylvania. Trump wins Wisconsin. Trump wins the entire map here, essentially, right? And, the fact that Clinton loses this one, and then she loses, I think that's the big one that she lost, but this is going to make it so that Trump gets the victory. And I'll even show you my predictions, by the way. I'll go back here. When I kind of made my own prediction saying, okay, I think Clinton's going to win. I think it's going to be a close election in 2016, just like you're going to do for me, electoral college map prediction. I felt like this was a fair assessment, and I was way off because here's the actual result, right? Trump wins Pennsylvania. Trump wins Michigan. Trump wins Wisconsin. He wins the 2nd district in Maine because Maine actually splits their votes. He wins almost the entire South, right? All of the South except for Virginia, right? He wins Arizona. He wins Utah. He wins Wyoming, right? I mean, this was an electoral just tidal wave for Trump that very few saw coming. And that's why I think there was so much shock in 2016 when the election results came out. And look at the result. 306 to 232, right? When they originally had, maybe not too far off here, right? But Trump's going to get that 2nd vote in Maine. Trump's going to end up winning Michigan there. And then he wins everything else. Just cleans the board up, and there you go. So this is why it's always interesting talking about like voter obstacles and who doesn't vote and who does vote, especially going into 2020. Like I said, they're predicting a really high turnout. And that could have just major implications on a state-by-state basis as to who wins those states. And being able to predict that's going to be very, very challenging. Okay, guys, I'll stop there. I will pick up with polling in my next video. I hope that was a good overview of maybe why people don't vote or some obstacles facing people voting. We'll see y'all.